This presentation will explore the life of Mr. William Cooper and his influence on equality and Indigenous rights within Australia. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers are warned that the following presentation may contain images of deceased persons. William Cooper was born on the 18th of December 1861, the fifth of 8 children between non-Indigenous James Cooper and Yorta Yorta woman Kitty Lewis. He later died on the 29th of March 1941, a hero amongst Indigenous Australians. William Cooper was a proud Indigenous man of Yorta Yorta descent. Atwood and Marcus explored the dispossession of the Yorta Yorta community at the hand of non-Indigenous people and the fear felt by William Cooper. Cooper recalls his mother warning he and his brothers and sisters that white men were coming and that they needed to hide until they had passed. In 1884, Cooper returned to Maluga, where he converted to Christianity, and in June of 1884 he married his first wife, Annie Clarendon Murray, a Yorta Yorta woman. William and Annie had 2 children together, only one of which survived. In 1889, further tragedy struck when Annie passed away. Prior to Annie's death, Cooper and his family moved to Kamaroo Gunga, which in Yorta Yorta means our home. It was there he met and married Agnes Hamilton in 1893. Together they had 6 children before her death in 1910. Atwood and Marcus described Kamaroo Gunga as the most successful protection board station, where the Indigenous population cleared approximately 365 hectares of the 1,200 hectare reserve. Through the success of the wheat harvesting to supplement their wages, the Indigenous population self-funded the additional cultivation of fruit, vegetables and cattle on the station. The success experience continued for approximately 20 years prior to the implementations of additional protection board policies. The seizure of family blocks of land and crops resulted in bitterness and backlash by some members of the Indigenous community. The Museum of Australian Democracy examined the level of control the Protection Board Act had over Indigenous people's lives. This control extended to areas of residence, marriage, and over other aspects of their daily life. 2 of the policies which affected the people of Kamaroo Gunga the most were centralised around the board wanting to obtain all the profits for themselves. Atwood and Marcus explores the demands placed on Indigenous to work the land for payment of board coffers, soon removing Indigenous people's rights to farm independently completely. Further to this, the Museum of Australian Democracy noted the refusal to continue providing financial assistance for those expelled from the reserve. As a result of the backlash, many Indigenous people were removed from the reserves for disciplinary infractions, Cooper included. Atwood and Marcus stated that in about 1910, Cooper had a quarrel with the manager and moved to Victoria and had a little home near the Murray. It was after his expulsion that Cooper began exploring politics, which Aboriginal Victoria described as a result of the poverty and inequality experienced by Indigenous people, both around him and his own experiences. Cooper attended literacy classes as an adult in an attempt to learn basic literacy, to aid his attempts at assisting the oppressed. During the 1920s and 30s, Cooper became a member of the Australian Workers' Union, where he campaigned for Aboriginal workers' rights within New South Wales and Victoria regions. This is where Cooper's longing to help his people was noted by others, including Atwood and Marcus. In about 1933, Cooper, now in his 70s, and his 3rd wife, Sarah Nelson, another Coranderrk woman, moved to Melbourne, where Cooper was able to receive the old age pension, which was denied whilst living in the reserves. During his time in Melbourne, Cooper, with the assistance of other prominent Indigenous people, established the Australian Aborigines League in 1936. The Australian Dictionary of Biography discussed during Cooper's time as a member of the Australian Aborigines League, he was appointed the Honorary Secretary. In this position, Cooper petitioned for the direct representation of Indigenous people within the Australian Parliament. This, along with equality for Indigenous people both in basic human rights and in the recognition of Aboriginal land rights. Further to the initial petition, William Cooper, Arthur Bordeaux and other members of the Australian Aborigines League formulated a program focusing on obtaining civil rights and the attempt to reverse racial discrimination. Atwood and Marcus discussed the belief that through the removal of racial discrimination, Indigenous people would be able to receive equality and give Aboriginals the opportunity for advancement. William Cooper, William Ferguson and Jack Patton helped establish the Day of Mourning in 1938. The National Museum Australia described it as the 150th anniversary of white men's seizure of our country, the day which Indigenous people would protest against the inequitable treatment they received, protest and call for education, new laws and citizenship of all Indigenous Australians. Burke and Edwards discuss a belief that in 1788 marked the beginning of great suffrage for Indigenous people, and was perhaps a time of mourning, not celebration. William Cooper, the Honorary Secretary of the Australian Aborigines League, spoke in 1939 regarding the celebration of Australian history, stating, "How much compensation have we had? How much of our land has been paid for? Not one iota. Again we state that we're the original owners of the country. In spite of force, prestige, or anything else you may like, morally, this land is ours. We have been ejected and despoiled of our God-given right, and our inheritance has been forcefully taken from us." The National Archives of Australia discussed that in 1937, William Cooper gathered 1,814 signatures petitioning King George V for Indigenous representation and civil rights, which the Australian government declined to forward. William Cooper's legacy within the Australian Aborigines League and their tireless petitions for the recognition of civil and Indigenous rights came to fruition with the 1967 referendum, where the Australian Aborigines League, the Aborigines Progression Association and alike assisted, which the National Archives of Australia reported 90% of Australians supported. Foreign Minister Mr. Kevin Rudd spoke of the pride Cooper possessed, his passion and his desire to help Indigenous people, not just during his generations, but for generations to come. Foreign Minister Rudd stated, "And so it is possible to trace the thread of William Cooper's passion, ideas and hard work right from the 1930s through to the formation of the councils that would be a national black voice, the Australian Aborigine Advancement League and the Federal Council for the Advancement of Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders, the Freedom Rides of 1964 and 1965, the 1967 referendum. As Sir Doug Nicholls said in the 1960s, everything comes back to William Cooper. He fired me to follow through." Many other great Aboriginal leaders, including many in this room, have followed in the footsteps of William Cooper over the better part of a century. And you and Australians more broadly are richer for building on William Cooper's legacy.